The Los Angeles Clippers are currently the 6th seed in the Western Conference, and this is one of the best stories in the NBA. And they are a sneaky contender in the NBA, and I'm going to tell you why. But we have to revisit a trade that happened many years ago. See, at the time, the Los Angeles Clippers, they had a young and exciting, fun team. And the leader of that team was a young and up-and-coming player in SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who right now is one of the best players in the NBA. But they traded him to the OKC Thunder to bring in Paul George. Why would they do that? Because Kawhi Leonard was a free agent. Kawhi Leonard has won a championship with the San Antonio Spurs. At that time, he was their best player on that roster. You still had Tim Duncan. He was aging out, and the same with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. But Kawhi Leonard was a young and up-and-coming star. Things soured with him and the Spurs organization, so they traded him to the Raptors. And what does he do in his first year with the Toronto Raptors? He gets them their first and only championship as I record this video. So when you see a player like this, a top 5 player at that time, hell, some people would say that he was the best player at basketball at that point in time because he just carried the Raptors to a championship win, even though he did have help with Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Pascal Siakam. And for more context, Klay Thompson did go down with ACL injury, and Kevin Durant went down with Achilles injury, but Kawhi Leonard was still the best player in that series. In order to bring over Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers, they had to go out there and they had to trade for Paul George because Kawhi Leonard, he wanted to play with Paul George. They went out there, they brought in Paul George, and they traded a lot of first-round picks to do so. So when you look at that Thunder team right now, part of their success is because they made that trade with the Clippers many years ago. You had the tandem of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And it was a dream scenario because right across from them, the other team in LA, the Lakers, they have LeBron James, they have Anthony Davis. This has to be great. And unfortunately, we never saw that playoff series happen because of a lot of injuries that happened to Anthony Davis, injuries with LeBron James, but more so the injuries with the Clippers, with Kawhi Leonard, and also with Paul George. You see, LeBron James brought a championship to the Lakers in the bubble run. The Clippers, they don't have a championship. And it seems like it has always been a dark cloud over this organization, even dating back to when they had Lob City, when Doc Rivers was the head coach. They had CP3, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. They could never figure things out. And you had Jamal Crawford. They were not even able to go out there and win a championship with that roster. So you thought better days would be ahead with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. That was not the case. Kawhi Leonard would go down with some knee injuries, and the organization wasn't the same without him, because he is still one of the best two-way players in the association. So you had to depend on Paul George. Paul George was very underwhelming with the Clippers, and he walked away in free agency. He went to the Philadelphia 76ers. For more context on this conversation, Paul George wanted a 3-year deal, similar to what Kawhi Leonard got. Now remember this, Kawhi Leonard is a multiple-time NBA champion in this league. Paul George has never played in the finals in his career. And the only time that he has been a number 1 option truly with his team was with the Indiana Pacers. And that was a very long time ago before he suffered that leg injury in the Olympic trial. Paul George, as a number 2 option, he's solid at that time. Right now, to request a 3-year deal similar to Kawhi Leonard and to want a no trade clause on top of that, that's asinine. So the Clippers say, you know what? You can kick rocks. He goes over to the Philadelphia 76ers, to where he has been completely terrible. He cares more about his podcast than he cares about the actual team. And by letting Paul George go, it allocated more money to the rest of the roster. So you could go out there and give James Harden more money, and you can bring in key pieces like Derrick Jones Jr., who is one of the best two-way players that you can have at the forward position. And you can bring in Chris Dunn, who is a very good defensive guard in the association also. And that's what the Clippers have done. It was a bad deal to go out there and trade SGA in favor of Paul George. But at that time, I'm going to come out and I'm going to defend the Clippers. They did not know SGA was going to be this special. And Paul George was a finalist in the MVP voting. He was a top 3 candidate. And he had a great year with OKC. It just didn't pan out. But the Clippers, they bounced back in a very good way. Before this season started, a lot of analysts and a lot of people in general, they're saying that the Clippers are going to be a lottery team. They're going to be terrible. They're low on picks because the picks they traded to the Thunder. That hasn't been the case. They look like a playoff caliber team right now. And dare I say, they look like a championship team because their defense is so amazing. They're second in defensive net rating next to the OKC Thunder. And when you look at the Western Conference, the teams that are in front of them, I believe the Clippers can give them a lot of problems because of their veteranship. You have the Memphis Grizzlies, very good basketball team. Denver Nuggets, they're amazing also. Houston Rockets are a very good and young and up-and-coming team. The Los Angeles Lakers and the OKC Thunder at the #1 spot. And the thick of things are the LA Clippers. And they have been a favorable team all season long with Kawhi Leonard being out, dealing with that knee injury that he suffered last year. You see, Kawhi Leonard actually came out and he performed very well. He played 68 games last season. He averaged 24 points a game, 6 rebounds. He also had 3.6 assists. And we all know this about Kawhi Leonard. He's a throwback. That's why I love his game so much. He's not going to chunk up a lot of threes, even though he's capable of making 4 to 5 threes a game when he's red hot. He's a mid-range killer that can get to the rack. He's a perfect offensive player, but his defense pushes him over the top. Kawhi Leonard is a major throwback, but he was able to finish out the season with a knee injury, and they even carried over to this season. So how did it get to the point to where they are above 500 team with their best player still being out? Because James Harden has still been one of the best facilitating guards in the association, and that pick and roll game with him and Zubac has been phenomenal. When you look at James Harden, he's averaging 21 points a game, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. The shooting splits, they're not the best. He is shooting 40% from the field, and the three-point percentage is 34%. It's not the best for James Harden. We're used to James Harden being more efficient from the field, but right now it's working out. And James Harden will take over a game still. He's not the James Harden that he was with the Houston Rockets, but over the last 2 to 3 years, you can still see that James Harden has a lot left in the tank. But you look at Norman Powell. He has been the biggest beneficiary of Paul George leaving his organization. Norman Powell is having a great year this year. And if it wasn't for LeBron James, who went out there in the All-Star Weekend game and said 30 minutes ahead of time, I'm not going to play, I'm dealing with a foot injury and an ankle injury, Norman Powell could have been an all-star in his place. In my opinion, he should have been an all-star. He's averaging 24 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. He's shooting 50% from the field. He's shooting 43% from 3. And he's averaging 4 3-pointers a game. That's ridiculous. One of the best shooters and one of the best scorers in the NBA right now. And it's Norman Powell. Just last year, he was just averaging 14 points a game. So him in a bigger role, playing alongside James Harden, has been great. And then you bring back Kawhi Leonard over the last 2 months. Now, Kawhi Leonard is still easing himself back into the game plan. He did have 25 points against the Memphis Grizzlies. He had 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He's only averaging 16 points a game, but he's only played 15 games up to this point in time in the season. 4 rebounds, 3 assists. I expect for Kawhi Leonard to go out there and average at least 20 to 22 points a game before the season is fully over. But Tyronn Lue, they have to be careful here. Kawhi Leonard doesn't have to play every single night. He doesn't have to play back-to-back games. You're already a top seed in the Western Conference. Go out there and let him rest a couple of games because you're going to need him for the NBA playoffs. And Kawhi Leonard, and I know it's crazy to say, when he's fully healthy, he is still one of the best players to have in a playoff setting because he could take over games on both sides of the court. And even though he's been dealing with those knee injuries, he is still a great defensive player. You can still put him in one-on-one situations with a Stephen Curry, with a LeBron James. And he's going to give those guys hell majority of the time. And when you look at the rest of the roster, because it's more than just Kawhi Leonard, Norman Powell, and also James Harden. It's the unsung heroes, Derrick Jones Jr., who I mentioned before at the forward position. He's chasing guys off the three-point line. He's a very good defensive playmaker. 10 points a game. He's averaging 4 rebounds, shooting 52% from the field. And check this out. He's shooting 37% from 3. He's a definition of a 3-and-D wing. And this is the one thing that the Clippers do have. They have a lot of players on the perimeter that's going to chase you off the three-point line. We're in the golden age right now of the NBA in terms of guys that love to just go out there and chuck up threes. When you look at the defense that Tyronn Lue is running right now, and he's a great head coach, but he's running this with Jeff Van Gundy. Last season, Kawhi Leonard was healthy for majority of the regular season. They were 16th in defensive net rating. The reason why they're second in defensive net rating right now is not only just because of Coach Lue, it's because of Jeff Van Gundy. Everywhere he has been in his coaching career, even before he went into the NBA, he preaches one thing: defense, 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 and take away the three-point shot. Force those players to go into the paint against our big. And you look at the Clippers, they have a very good big in Zubac. who is down there holding things down in the paint. One of the better rim protectors to have in the NBA. And his pick and roll game with James Harden is very good. He's shooting 54% at the rim when it comes to hook shots and layups. So he's going to go out there and get you the easy buckets, and he's not going to stand in the way of Kawhi Leonard and also with James Harden. And he's averaging 15 points a game, 12 rebounds, and he's having 2.5 assists per night and 61% from the field. He is a traditional big man. He reminds me a lot of Marc Gasol. He'll stand out the way. He'll do the dirty work. He'll set the screen. Whatever you ask him to do, he will do. Now, he's not going to go out there and stretch the floor like a Victor Wembanyama or Nikola Jokic. That's not his game. But his game is going out there and doing the fundamental things and standing out the way. And when you need him the most on the defensive side of the ball, that's where he's going to step up. It's going to be hard for a lot of young teams to go out there and to try to go against the Clippers in the 7-game series. When I look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, even though they are very great, SGA will go out there and try to take over a game late in the matchup. They will have droughts to where he's their only offensive playmaker. And those other young players, they will step up. But we saw this last year against the Dallas Mavericks. Now they have two bigs now with Hardenstein, and they also have Chet Holmgren. Two very good players. But against the Clippers, you're going to need more than just those bigs to go out there and put in work against you. The shooting has to be on point. And I look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are a solid 3-point shooting team, but you're going to really have to hit your shots against this Clippers organization. And I will also come on here and bring up one negative point with the Clippers. If I have to say something negative about this organization right now and about this team in general, they play a lot of ISO ball with James Harden. Look, even back with OKC, when he was on his rookie deal, he played a lot of one-on-one ball. He did that with the Houston Rockets and with the 76ers. But it's a little bit different now because he has Kawhi Leonard and he has Norman Powell to help him out. All three of those guys can go out there, they can create their own shots, and they can get their own buckets. But it will be stretches of time to where you look at the Clippers and say, okay, what the hell is going on? They're just playing isolation ball right now. But as long as their defense can make through, they're going to be okay. And they did bring in Ben Simmons via the buyout market because of Brooklyn Nets. They bought him out. He's a very good player to have in the system with the Clippers right now. I'm not saying that he's going to be the Ben Simmons that we saw with the first 2 years of the 76ers. But when you look at Ben Simmons, he's going to stay out the way. He's not going to take terrible 3-point shots like Paul George. He is still a very good defensive player, but he is known for being a facilitator. As long as he can be aggressive towards the rim, the Clippers are going to be scary to face for every team in the NBA, including the Eastern and the Western Conference. And when you look at Ben Simmons, he had 12 points in his debut. Granted, it was against a bad basketball team. I have to see them go out there against stronger competition like the Rockets, like the Grizzlies. But like I mentioned before, the Grizzlies, Kawhi Leonard had over 20 points. And in that matchup, they don't have a lot of wings that can go out there and they can run Kawhi Leonard around. They don't have a lot of wings that can go out there and give problems to a guy like Norman Powell or James Harden, even though they are guards. So when I look at that matchup, they may give the Grizzlies a tough matchup in a 7-game series. I like the Clippers. I love the coaching staff. I want to see Ben Simmons have his redemption arc because he got a bad rep with the 76ers, and rightfully so, because he passed up on an open layup. And he got a horrible rep with the Brooklyn Nets, and rightfully so, because he was rarely able to play games. But he looked motivated with the Clippers. And you can run a lineup with him at the point guard position. James Harden at the 2, Kawhi Leonard at the 3, Derrick Jones Jr., and you can have Zubac. You could bring Norman Powell off the bench, or you can still have Norman Powell in the starting lineup and you just go smaller from that point on. I like the Clippers a lot. They're going to be a tough team in the Western Conference for the rest of the stretch, especially in the back half of this season. But let me know in the comment section below how you feel about the Los Angeles Clippers, and are they a huge threat in the Western Conference? I do understand that it comes down to the knees of Kawhi Leonard and the fact that James Harden has disappeared in the past in the playoffs, but James Harden has also had some big moments in the playoffs with the Houston Rockets, with the 76ers, and hell, even with the Clippers. If it wasn't for Paul George going out there and being hot and cold, more so being cold than hot, the Clippers could have easily went out there and won some more matchups in the playoffs last season. And I look at the Luka Doncic trade with the Lakers. A lot of people have pushed the Clippers on the backside, but right now they're one of the better teams in California. And I would love to see a 7-game series between the Lakers and the Clippers right now with LeBron and Luka, and especially with Kawhi, James Harden, Norman Powell, and that entire team they have going on. But most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.